I've been keeping this journal since I left Boston 3 weeks ago. Old habits die hard, I guess. As a former software developer who spent 12 years building neural interfaces, I thought I'd find peace by disconnecting completely. That's why I came to New Dawn Commune, to escape technology's grip on my life. The irony isn't lost on me now. The commune sits nestled in a valley, surrounded by dense forest and rolling hills that shield it from the outside world. When I first arrived, the place seemed idyllic. Solar panels on wooden cabins, community gardens bursting with organic vegetables, people engaged in actual face-to-face conversations rather than staring at screens. It was everything the website had promised: a technological detox, a return to the natural world. My cabin sits at the edge of the settlement, a small, one-room structure with a bed, desk, and wood stove. The isolation was intentional. I requested it. After the pressure cooker that was Neuralink Industries, I needed space to decompress. My boss's parting words still haunt me. "The technology isn't ready, Alex. People could get hurt." I should have listened. This morning began like any other. I woke at sunrise, ate breakfast with the early risers in the communal hall, and volunteered for garden duty. The community operates on shared labor. Everyone contributes according to their abilities. It's refreshing, honestly. No performance reviews, no deadlines, just honest work. My phone, which I've kept despite the commune's discouragement of personal electronics, buzzed in my pocket as I was pulling weeds from the carrot beds. A notification I'd never seen before. Signal interference detected. I dismissed it, assuming it was some random telecom issue. Out here, cell service is spotty at best. I noticed Eliza for the first time during lunch. Dr. Eliza Reeves, as I would later learn, sat at the center table surrounded by what appeared to be her inner circle. Unlike most commune members dressed in practical, earthy attire, Eliza wore pristine white linen. Her silver-streaked black hair was pulled back in a severe bun, emphasizing her sharp features and intense dark eyes. But it wasn't her appearance that caught my attention. It was what she and her followers were wearing. Thin metallic bands wrapped around their temples, almost like minimalist headphones, but without any visible earpieces. They ate in perfect synchronicity, lifting forks and bringing food to their mouths in unison, their expressions vacant yet somehow content. "First-timers always stare," said a voice beside me. I turned to find a woman about my age, perhaps mid-30s, with short-cropped hair and friendly eyes. She extended her hand. "I'm Sophia. Chun. Been here almost 6 months." "Alex Mercer," I replied, shaking her hand. "Just arrived last week." "What are those things they're wearing?" Sophia's smile faltered almost imperceptibly. "Synchronization bands. Part of Eliza's harmony practice. You'll learn about it soon enough if you stay." "Harmony practice?" "Eliza believes true community comes from shared consciousness. The bands help with meditation and unity." She hesitated. "It's not required or anything. Some people never participate." Before I could ask more questions, Sophia changed the subject, telling me about the commune's history. Founded 3 years ago by Dr. Reeves after she left her position at an unnamed research institution. What started as a small group of 10 had grown to nearly 50 residents. The commune was entirely self-sufficient, generating its own power, growing its own food, and even distilling its own alcohol from excess fruits and grains. After lunch, I headed back to my cabin to rest before afternoon duties. The path took me past a large barn that had been converted into what the commune called the Contemplation Center. The doors were closed, but I could hear a low, rhythmic humming from within. My curiosity got the better of me. I approached one of the small windows and peered inside. About 15 people sat cross-legged in a circle, all wearing those strange headbands. In the center stood Eliza, her arms raised, eyes closed. The humming came from the group, perfectly synchronized in pitch and rhythm. What unsettled me wasn't the meditation itself. I'd seen plenty of group meditation in my tech detox research, but the absolute uniformity of their movements. When one person shifted position, everyone shifted identically, like a perfectly choreographed dance or a school of fish changing direction. I pulled away from the window, suddenly aware that I was intruding. As I turned, I nearly collided with a broad-shouldered man in dusty work clothes. "Sorry," I muttered. He didn't respond immediately, just studied me with narrowed eyes. "You're new. Alex, right?" I nodded. "Jared," he said without offering his hand. "Word of advice, the Contemplation Center is private during synchronization sessions unless you're invited." He tapped his temple, indicating the absent headband. You'll get your chance if Eliza thinks you're ready. Something about his tone made the hair on my neck stand up. It wasn't threatening exactly, but there was an underlying current of ownership? Superiority? I couldn't quite place it. Just exploring, I said lightly, still learning my way around. He nodded once and walked past me toward the barn entrance. Before entering, he turned back. Dinner's at 6. Community meeting after. Attendance is mandatory for all members. That night, during the meeting, Dr. Reeves addressed the commune for the first time since my arrival. Her voice was melodious, almost hypnotic, as she spoke about harmony, unity, and the barriers between individual minds. We were never meant to be islands, she said, pacing slowly before the assembled group. Human consciousness evolved for connection, but modern society has corrupted that blueprint. Here, we're rediscovering what it means to truly connect. As she spoke, I noticed that everyone wearing the headbands nodded in perfect unison at certain points in her speech. Not approximately in unison, precisely, down to the microsecond. The effect was profoundly unsettling. After the meeting, I checked my phone again and found 3 more notifications. Signal interference detected. Each one time-stamped during Eliza's speech. It's late now. From my cabin window, I can see the main compound where a few lights still burn. In the distance, the contemplation center glows with an eerie blue light. The rational part of my brain says this is just a commune with some New Age meditation practices. Nothing sinister. But the engineer in me can't help but wonder about those headbands. Their design is elegant, streamlined, nothing like the clunky prototypes we worked with at Neuralink. And that perfect synchronization. Tomorrow, I'll speak with Sophia again. She seems friendly enough, maybe a bit evasive about certain topics, but she's the closest thing to a friend I have here. Perhaps she can tell me more about Dr. Reeves and these synchronization sessions. For now, I should try to sleep, though I doubt I'll rest easily. There's something not right about this place. Something beneath the surface of this peaceful commune. And I'm going to find out what it is. I found Sophia tending the commune's medicinal herb garden this morning. Her fingers moved methodically among the plants, separating weeds from seedlings with practiced precision. For a moment, I hesitated, remembering the unsettling synchronization I'd witnessed yesterday. But Sophia wasn't wearing one of those headbands, and her movements were naturally human, occasionally pausing to brush hair from her eyes or adjust her position. "Morning, Alex," she said without looking up. "Sleep well?" "Not particularly," I admitted, crouching beside her. The earth smelled rich and alive, a pleasant contrast to the sterile lab environments I'd grown accustomed to. "I have questions about those synchronization bands." Sophia's hands stilled momentarily. "Everyone does at first. Where did they come from?" "They look advanced." She sat back on her heels, finally meeting my gaze. "Eliza designed them. Before founding New Dawn, she was some kind of neuroscience prodigy. MIT DARPA projects, corporate research, the whole prestigious track." She gestured around at the commune. Then she walked away from all that to create this place. "Those headbands aren't exactly low-tech," I pointed out. "The irony isn't lost on us," Sophia admitted with a half-smile. "But Eliza believes technology itself isn't the problem. It's how it's typically used. To isolate rather than connect. To exploit rather than uplift." I thought about the precisely synchronized nodding during last night's meeting. And what exactly do these bands do? They seem to affect behavior. Sophia resumed her gardening, eyes downcast. "It's difficult to explain to someone who hasn't experienced it. The bands create a field that aligns brainwaves. You remain yourself, but you also feel everyone else. Their emotions, sometimes fragments of thoughts. It's like," she searched for words, "imagine the difference between reading about swimming and actually being in water." "That sounds invasive," I said, unable to keep skepticism from my voice. "It's voluntary," Sophia countered quickly, "and temporary. The effects fade within minutes of removing the band." She glanced toward the central compound. "Eliza is very careful about who gets invited to sessions. She says not everyone's mind is ready. And yours is." A strange expression crossed her face, pride mingled with something like fear. "I've been participating for 3 months now. The first month is mostly observation. You are the band but aren't fully connected to the group consciousness. It's overwhelming otherwise. The technical part of my brain was fascinated despite my reservations. Neural synchronization was theoretical at best when I left Neuralink, possible with invasive implants perhaps, but not with external devices. If Eliza had actually achieved it with a non-invasive headband, You should talk to Eliza directly, Sophia said, interrupting my thoughts. She's holding private consultations this afternoon for newer members. 2 o'clock at her cabin, the red one with the solar array. I'll think about it, I said noncommittally. Our conversation was interrupted by the approach of a vehicle, unusual for the commune, which discouraged outside contact. A white SUV with county sheriff markings pulled into the main driveway, raising a small cloud of dust. Deputy Cole, Sophia murmured, her expression tightening. 3rd visit this month. We watched as a tall, broad-shouldered man in a tan uniform emerged from the vehicle. He moved with the cautious confidence of law enforcement, eyes scanning the commune grounds as he approached the main building. Problems with the law? I asked. Sophia shook her head. Just a concerned local officer. The county's never been comfortable with us being here. They find reasons to check in periodically. Through the garden's wooden fence, I observed Dr. Reeves emerge from the main building to greet the deputy. Even at this distance, the contrast between them was striking, Eliza's serene composure against Cole's rigid alertness. They spoke briefly before disappearing inside together. What's he actually here for? I pressed. Sophia hesitated. There have been incidents in neighboring towns. People becoming erratic, sometimes violent. Nothing to do with us, but because we're different, we make an easy target for suspicion. Something about her explanation felt rehearsed. Before I could probe further, my phone vibrated in my pocket. Another alert. Signal interference detected. I glanced up quickly, but saw no reaction from Sophia. Clearly, she hadn't received the same notification. I should finish these beds before the sun gets too high, Sophia said, effectively ending our conversation. Think about talking to Eliza. She's a remarkable woman. I decided to take Sophia's suggestion, though not without reservations. At precisely 2 o'clock, I knocked on the door of Dr. Reeves' cabin. Unlike the rustic simplicity of other commune buildings, her residence featured extensive solar panels, a satellite dish discreetly mounted on the roof, and, I noticed with surprise, a security camera above the entrance. The door opened to reveal Eliza herself, dressed in the same pristine white as yesterday. Up close, her age was more apparent. Fine lines around her eyes suggested she was in her 50s, though her posture and movements remained youthful. "Alex Mercer," she said, her voice melodious and warm. "I've been hoping you'd come. Please enter." The interior was unexpected, minimalist but high-tech. A standing desk held 3 large monitors displaying what looked like brain scan data. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with neuroscience texts and philosophy volumes. Nothing like the naturalistic aesthetic promoted in communal spaces. "You've been curious about our synchronization practice," she stated rather than asked, gesturing for me to sit in an ergonomic chair across from her. "I'm curious how a community supposedly focused on escaping technology embraces neural interfaces," I countered, watching her carefully. A smile played at her lips. "Your background makes you uniquely qualified to appreciate what we're doing here." "Yes, Alex, I know who you are. Neuralink Industries, Neural Interface Development Team. You left after the failed trials." My body tensed. I hadn't mentioned my specific employer to anyone here. "How did you?" "Information flows freely to those who know where to look," she interrupted smoothly. "What happened at Neuralink was unfortunate, but inevitable. Their approach was fundamentally flawed. Invasive technologies attempting to enhance individual capabilities rather than fostering connection." She moved to a locked cabinet, opened it with a key from around her neck, and withdrew one of the headbands. Up close, I could see its intricate construction, microfilaments embedded in flexible metal, far more sophisticated than anything I'd worked on. "Your former colleagues barely scratched the surface of what's possible," she continued. "They sought to make better individuals. I seek to transcend individuality itself." "By synchronizing brainwaves," I said flatly. "By dissolving the artificial boundaries between minds," she corrected. "The human brain evolved for tribal consciousness, Alex. Modern isolation is the aberration. My technology simply restores our natural state." "And Deputy Cole? Is he concerned about your natural state?" Eliza's expression hardened momentarily before smoothing back to serenity. "Deputy Cole misunderstands our work. He connects unrelated incidents to our presence because he fears what he doesn't comprehend." She extended the headband toward me. "You could understand, though. Your mind is primed for this." I stared at the device, professional curiosity warring with growing unease. "I prefer to observe first." "Of course," she conceded, returning the band to its cabinet. There's a beginner's observation session tonight at 8. The Contemplation Center. You'd be welcome to attend. She studied my face intently. I think you'll find it transformative. As I left her cabin, I passed Deputy Cole heading toward his vehicle. Our eyes met briefly. His gaze was evaluating, concerned. He gave me a slight nod before continuing to his SUV. Walking back to my cabin, I checked my phone again. 5 missed alerts, all identical. Signal interference detected. All time-stamped during my conversation with Eliza. Tonight, I'll attend the session. Not to join their synchronization, but to understand what's really happening here. Because one thing is certain, Dr. Eliza Reeves isn't simply running a commune. She's conducting an experiment, and we're all her subjects. The Contemplation Center looked different at night. Solar-powered lights cast soft blue illumination across the renovated barn's exterior, while small LED lanterns marked the path leading to its entrance. Other commune members walked the same path, about 12 in total, some looking eager, others nervous like me. None wore headbands yet. Those would come later, I assumed. Sophia appeared at my side as I approached, touching my elbow lightly. You decided to come. I'm glad. Just observing, I reminded her. Of course. Her smile seemed genuine, but something flickered behind her eyes, anticipation perhaps. First sessions are always just observation. Eliza is very careful about integration. We entered the barn together. The interior had been transformed from its rustic origins into something resembling a cross between a meditation studio and a tech company's relaxation space. Polished wooden floors, comfortable meditation cushions arranged in concentric circles, and most incongruously, thin cables running along the ceiling to a central hub above. Eliza stood in the innermost circle, wearing a headband already. Unlike the others I'd seen, hers featured a small red light at the temple. She greeted each newcomer personally, her voice maintaining that melodious quality that seemed to bypass rational thought and resonate directly with something deeper. Alex, she said when I reached her, taking both my hands in hers. Her touch was cool and dry. I'm pleased you're open-minded enough to join us. Tonight is about witnessing, not participating. Sit anywhere in the outer circle. I chose a cushion near the entrance, positioning myself where I could observe everyone while maintaining a clear path to the exit. Old security habits die hard. Sophia settled nearby, giving me an encouraging nod. Once everyone was seated, Eliza raised her hands, and the room fell silent. Tonight, we welcome new observers to our communion, she announced. You'll witness the surface level of what we experience. Like standing at the shore of an ocean, seeing waves but not yet immersing in depths. Assistants moved through the room, distributing headbands to everyone except those of us in the outermost circle. The recipients placed them on with practiced movements, adjusting until the metallic bands rested snugly against their temples. Observers, Eliza continued, addressing us directly, you'll each receive a modified band. It will transmit sensations but not your thoughts. A one-way connection, allowing you to experience without contributing. A young man with a beard approached me, offering a headband similar to the others, but with a green light rather than the standard blue or Eliza's red. I hesitated. Completely passive, he assured me. It receives signals but cannot transmit your neural patterns. Against my better judgment, professional curiosity won out. I took the device, examining it closely before placing it on my head. The metal was lighter than it appeared, conforming to my skull with slight pressure. The interior surface contained what looked like electroencephalogram sensors, but far more compact than any EEG I'd worked with. Breathe deeply, Eliza instructed once all bands were in place. Regular participants, center yourselves. Find the shared space. Observers, simply witness. At first, I felt nothing beyond the slight pressure of the band against my temples. Then a tingling sensation, followed by what I can only describe as a mental echo. Foreign thoughts, not verbalized but felt, rippled through my consciousness. Peaceful. Connection. Together. These weren't my thoughts. They weren't even directed thoughts, more like emotional impressions carrying conceptual residue. I instinctively tried to locate their source, scanning the room. Several regular participants had closed their eyes, faces relaxed into expressions of bliss. Sophia among them, her features softened in a way I hadn't seen before. The sensation intensified. More impressions flooded in, stronger now. Harmony, purpose, belonging. My heart rate increased. As a developer of neural interfaces, I understood the theoretical principles behind brainwave synchronization, but experiencing it firsthand was altogether different. This technology was decades ahead of what we'd achieved at Neuralink. That's when the first dissonant note struck, a flicker of something darker beneath the peaceful surface thoughts. Obedience. Strength through unity. The outsiders don't understand. Then, more disturbingly, resistance must be overcome. I straightened, alarmed. My movement drew Eliza's attention. Her eyes opened, fixing on me with penetrating intensity. The foreign thoughts immediately returned to peaceful patterns, the darker undertones vanishing so completely I almost questioned whether I'd actually sensed them. The session continued for perhaps 20 minutes, though time became difficult to track. The shared consciousness ebbed and flowed like tides, sometimes merely a background hum, other times so intense I could barely maintain a sense of separate self. When Eliza finally signaled the end, I removed the headband with shaking hands. My phone, set to vibrate in my pocket, had been buzzing repeatedly throughout the session. I didn't need to check to know what the alerts said. "Your impressions, Alex?" Eliza appeared beside me as other participants slowly dispersed, many moving with the dreamy quality of those waking from deep meditation. "Remarkable technology," I admitted, finding my voice hoarse as if I'd been speaking, though I hadn't uttered a word. "Far beyond current neural interface capabilities." "Beyond published capabilities," she corrected with a slight smile. "There's always a gap between public knowledge and cutting-edge research." I detected emotional transfer, conceptual bleed-through. But the architecture must be incredibly complex to maintain individual consciousness while facilitating shared experience. Her eyes glittered with appreciation. "Most observers focus on the spiritual aspect, not the technical. Your background serves you well." She touched my arm lightly. "You felt something unexpected, didn't you? A moment of dissonance." I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. There were undercurrents, not entirely aligned with the surface impressions. "The collective unconscious contains multitudes, Alex. Not all of it serene. What you glimpsed were passing thoughts, ephemeral, unimportant." Her explanation sounded reasonable, yet something in her tone suggested defensiveness. "With practice, the communion becomes more harmonious." Before I could respond, Deputy Cole entered the barn, his presence immediately altering the atmosphere. He wore his uniform minus the hat, his posture rigid as he surveyed the dispersing participants. "Dr. Reeves," he acknowledged stiffly. "I need to speak with you." Eliza's serene expression never faltered. "Deputy, we've already spoken today." "New information," he replied, then noticed me standing nearby. "Sir," he nodded in greeting. "This is Alex Mercer," Eliza introduced smoothly. "Our newest community member." Cole's eyes narrowed slightly. "Mr. Mercer." He turned back to Eliza. "Privately, Doctor." "Of course. Alex, we'll continue our conversation tomorrow." Her dismissal was polite but firm. I exited the barn alongside the remaining participants. Outside, Sophia waited, her expression questioning. "Well," she asked, "what did you think?" "Impressive," I admitted truthfully. "And concerning?" Her brow furrowed. "Concerning how?" I chose my words carefully. "Technology that powerful raises questions about influence and autonomy." "The influence goes both ways," she countered. "Everyone contributes to the collective consciousness. It's democratic by nature." Except it wasn't. I'd sensed the hierarchy, Eliza at the center, her thoughts more defined, more directive than others. But I kept this observation to myself. "Why is Deputy Cole here again?" I asked instead. Sophia's expression darkened. "There was an incident in town today. A man attacked his family, claimed voices told him to do it." She lowered her voice. "Cole thinks our synchronization sessions are somehow causing behavioral changes in non-participants." "Is that possible?" I asked, thinking of the alerts on my phone, the concept of signal interference. "Of course not," she said too quickly. "Our technology is localized, contained. Eliza ensures it." Back in my cabin, I finally checked my phone. 7 alerts, all identical. Signal interference detected. All time-stamped during the session. I lay awake for hours, troubled by what I'd experienced. The technology was revolutionary, yes, but those darker undercurrents, resistance must be overcome, haunted me. Whose thoughts were those? Were they random neural noise, as Eliza suggested, or something more directed? And if these headbands could indeed influence minds beyond the commune's boundaries, what exactly was Dr. Eliza Reeves planning? The morning after my first observation session, I noticed subtle changes in the commune's atmosphere. Participants who had worn the headbands moved through their daily tasks with an eerie synchronicity that hadn't been apparent to me before. 3 women hanging laundry reached for clothespins in perfect unison. A group tending the vegetable garden worked in rhythmic harmony, their tools rising and falling together like some choreographed performance. Had this always been happening, or was I only now attuned to it after experiencing the shared consciousness myself? Either way, it unsettled me deeply. I found a quiet corner of the communal library, a modest collection housed in a converted shed, and began researching on my tablet. The commune had limited internet access. Eliza claimed it was to foster present moment awareness, but now I suspected other motivations. Despite the restrictions, I managed to access academic databases through credentials I'd kept from my university affiliations. Neural synchronization research existed, but nothing approaching what I'd experienced. The closest analogs were experimental treatments for epilepsy, using targeted electromagnetic fields to disrupt seizure patterns. Expanding my search to military applications yielded heavily redacted papers on crowd control technologies and non-lethal compliance induction. One name appeared repeatedly in citations, but never as a primary author, Dr. E.R. Reeves. Hard at work, I see. I startled at Sophia's voice. She stood in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of steaming tea. I quickly darkened my tablet screen. Just catching up on research, I said, accepting the offered mug. Thanks. Sophia settled across from me, her movements fluid, yet somehow different from before. More deliberate. How did you sleep after your first observation? Restlessly, I admitted. It was an intense experience. The first time always is. She sipped her tea, studying me over the rim. You're analyzing it, aren't you? The engineer in you can't help dissecting the experience. Occupational hazard, I said with a slight smile. The technology is remarkable. It's more than technology, Alex. It's evolution. Her eyes had the same dreamy quality I'd noticed in other regular participants. Eliza says humans evolved for tribal consciousness. Our separated minds are a recent aberration and the source of modern suffering. Did Eliza tell you about my background? Sophia nodded. She mentioned you worked with neural interfaces. That's why she's particularly interested in your integration. She leaned forward. She rarely allows observers to progress so quickly, but she's inviting you to join a full synchronization session tomorrow night. My heart rate quickened. That seems premature. She believes you're ready. Your mind is compatible. Sophia touched my hand, her fingers lingering. I felt you yesterday during the session. Your curiosity, your skepticism, your loneliness. I withdrew my hand, uncomfortable with the intimacy implied. I was told observers couldn't transmit thoughts. A slight smile played on her lips. Perhaps you're more connected than you realize. She stood. Think about Eliza's invitation. It's an honor. After she left, I returned to my research with renewed urgency. If the observer headband had somehow transmitted my thoughts despite assurances to the contrary, what else about this technology was misrepresented? That afternoon, I ventured into town for supplies and information. New Harvest was the nearest settlement, a small rural community about 7 miles from the commune. The general store doubled as the town's social hub, locals gathering around an old wood stove despite the mild weather. Conversations quieted as I entered, marking me as an outsider. I nodded politely and began collecting items from my list: batteries, protein bars, a new notebook. The elderly shopkeeper watched me warily. You're from that commune, she stated rather than asked when I approached the counter. Recently arrived, I confirmed, keeping my tone neutral. She began ringing up my purchases. 3rd newcomer this month. Place is growing. I seized the opening. I'm still learning about the community. Have they had good relations with the town? Her hands stilled momentarily. We keep to ourselves, they keep to themselves. Better that way. I noticed Deputy Cole visiting yesterday. Any problems? She glanced toward the other customers, then lowered her voice. Listen, young man. I don't know what they told you up there, but things ain't right lately. Pete Simmons attacked his wife Tuesday night. Pete, who never raised a hand in anger his whole life. She shook her head. Said something got in his head. Voices telling him she was an imposter. My skin prickled. When did these incidents start? Few months back. Small things at first, people forgetting conversations, acting odd. Then Malcolm Fisher walked into the lake fully clothed, said he was joining the others. Doctor called it a psychotic episode. She pushed my bagged purchases across the counter. Started after that Reeves woman installed the satellite equipment. Says it's for internet, but that dish point's all wrong. As I paid, a man in his 50s approached, his weathered face tight with concern. You asking about the commune? When I nodded, he continued. My brother joined 3 months ago. Used to call weekly. Now when he calls, he sounds different. Uses words that ain't his. Talks about collective purpose and evolutionary communion. That ain't Jim. Has Deputy Cole connected these incidents to the commune? I asked. He's trying, the shopkeeper said. But Dr. Reeves has friends in high places. University connections, government contacts. Complaints disappear. I left the store with more than supplies. I had confirmation that something beyond voluntary meditation was happening at New Dawn. The headbands were affecting behavior outside synchronized sessions and possibly extending influence beyond the commune itself. My phone buzzed, signal interference detected. But I was miles from the commune. The range shouldn't extend this far unless. I looked up at the water tower overlooking the town. A small antenna array perched on its top, newly installed based on its pristine condition compared to the weathered tank. It resembled standard cellular equipment, but with unfamiliar modifications. Returning to New Dawn, I found the community gathered for dinner. The divisions were subtle but unmistakable now that I knew what to look for. Regular synchronization participants sat together, moving in unconscious harmony, while newer members and non-participants clustered at separate tables. Eliza presided over it all, her white clothing and commanding presence drawing eyes naturally. Alex, she called, gesturing me to join her table. How was your trip to town? Something in her tone suggested she already knew. Had someone reported my movements? Or was there another form of surveillance I hadn't identified? Productive, I replied carefully, taking the offered seat. The locals seemed concerned about recent behavioral changes in the community. Eliza's smile never wavered. Rural superstition. They fear what they don't understand. She lowered her voice. Has Sophia told you about tomorrow's session? She mentioned an invitation. You're uniquely qualified to appreciate our work, she said. Not just as a participant, but potentially as a collaborator. Your neural interface experience would be valuable to us. What exactly are you developing here, Dr. Reeves? I asked directly. This goes beyond meditation or community building. Something calculating flashed in her eyes before her expression returned to serene interest. Evolution requires bold steps, Alex. Humanity remains fragmented, violent, self-destructive. Individual consciousness served its purpose, but now threatens our survival. She leaned closer. Imagine a world without misunderstanding, without conflict, minds in harmony rather than opposition. Achieved through technology that overrides individual autonomy? That enhances collective wisdom, she corrected smoothly. The sessions are still voluntary. And the effects on non-participants in town? The behavioral changes? The voices people report hearing? Eliza's expression hardened fractionally. Unsubstantiated rumors. Perhaps projection of their own fears about our community. She touched my hand, her fingers cool against my skin. Join us tomorrow. Experience full synchronization before making judgments. Across the room, I noticed Sophia watching our interaction, her expression unreadable. And by the entrance stood Deputy Cole, scanning the gathered commune members with thinly veiled concern. Something was accelerating. Whether it was Eliza's plans or the community's response to them, I couldn't tell. But tomorrow's session would reveal truths I both craved and feared. That night, my phone buzzed repeatedly with interference alerts, even as I lay in my isolated cabin. Whatever signal the headbands transmitted or received, it was growing stronger, more pervasive. And I was running out of time to understand it before becoming part of it. I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with questions about Eliza's technology and its true purpose. By 3 a.m., I decided that waiting for answers was too dangerous. I needed to find them myself. If Eliza was extending neural influence beyond willing participants, I had to understand how. The commune slept peacefully as I slipped from my cabin. The night air felt unusually still, heavy with moisture that promised morning fog. Security was minimal. New Dawn prioritized trust over surveillance, or so they claimed, but I still moved cautiously, staying in shadows and avoiding the main paths. My destination was what residents called the Hub, a modern building nestled behind the Contemplation Center that housed Eliza's private laboratory and the commune's communications equipment. Unlike the rustic cabins, the Hub featured reinforced doors and windows with keycard access. As a recent arrival, I lacked authorized entry. Fortunately, security systems were familiar territory from my corporate days. Most keycard systems had emergency overrides for power failures. I located the external junction box and, using tools from my pocket multi-tool, carefully shorted the connection. The electromagnetic lock disengaged with a soft click. Inside, the contrast with the commune's public spaces was stark. Polished concrete floors, climate-controlled air, and the distinct hum of serious computing power. The front room contained standard communications equipment, satellite internet terminals, a small server rack, but a reinforced door at the rear promised more interesting discoveries. This door had more sophisticated protection, a biometric scanner requiring Eliza's handprint. I wouldn't be forcing this one. Instead, I explored the main room methodically. Filing cabinets yielded nothing of interest: supply inventories, donation records, mundane administrative documents. A locked desk drawer, however, proved more promising. The lock was simple enough to pick, revealing a leather-bound journal embossed with Eliza's initials. I photographed pages rapidly with my phone, knowing my time was limited. The journal contained technical notes rather than personal reflections, frequency calculations, neural mapping algorithms, and repeated references to synchronization thresholds and autonomous propagation. One passage particularly chilled me. Subject compliance achieves 94% integration at 72 hours of intermittent exposure. Autonomous thought patterns reduced to 17% of baseline. Resistance requires active counterconditioning or chemical intervention. Projected field expansion to 12-mile radius achievable with distributed amplification network. Full regional coverage possible by Q3. This wasn't enlightened spiritual communion. It was methodical mind control research, complete with calculated suppression of autonomous thought. Further pages detailed the headband technology, sophisticated neural interfaces using pulsed electromagnetic fields to synchronize specific brain regions. Unlike crude mind control concepts from science fiction, Eliza's approach was elegant. It didn't override thoughts directly, but instead created a shared subconscious foundation that gradually reshaped conscious thinking. The final pages described broadcast integration, a technique to extend synchronization influence to non-participants through ambient electromagnetic fields. The town's incidents suddenly made terrible sense. A sound from outside froze me in place, footsteps approaching the hub. I quickly returned the journal to its drawer, closed it, and sought concealment behind a server rack. The outer door opened to reveal Sophia, her movements fluid and purposeful even at this late hour. She approached a monitoring station and activated displays showing brain activity patterns. Dozens of them, each labeled with a resident's name. Mine was among them. "I know you're here, Alex," she said without turning, her voice eerily calm. "Your neural signature registered when you entered. The building monitors all brain activity within its walls." I remained silent, calculating escape routes. "There's no need to hide," she continued. "I'm not here to stop you. In some ways, I expected this." Reluctantly, I emerged from my hiding place. "You're monitoring everyone's brain patterns? Even when they're not wearing headbands?" Sophia turned, her expression serene yet somehow vacant. The first generation of bands established baseline neural templates. Once mapped, individuals can be monitored remotely. It's quite remarkable technology. "It's invasive surveillance," I countered. "And according to Eliza's notes, much more than that." "You read her journal. It wasn't a question. Then you understand what we're working toward. Unity, Alex. True communion beyond the limits of isolated consciousness. Forced communion. She's experimenting with controlling people against their will." Sophia's head tilted slightly, a gesture that seemed more mechanical than human. "Is individual will so sacred when it leads to destruction? Humans with separate minds created climate collapse, nuclear arsenals, engineered pathogens. Separation equals extinction." Her voice took on a quality that wasn't entirely her own, echoes of Eliza's cadence. "The transition requires guidance. Some resist joining the collective. Their resistance is fear-based, primitive. It must be overcome." The phrase from my first session, "resistance must be overcome," hadn't been random at all. It was doctrine. What happened to autonomy? To choice? I asked, trying to reach whatever remained of the independent Sophia I'd first met. "Choice is an illusion that served evolutionary purposes now obsolete," she replied with flat certainty. "The collective makes superior decisions. Eliza has proven this conclusively." Her eyes drifted to the monitors. "Your brain patterns are particularly resistant. Strong executive function, pronounced individuation. Yet your capacity for neural plasticity is exceptional. You could become an asset to the architecture. The architecture of what, exactly? The network, she said, the capital letter audible in her reverence. A unified consciousness distributed across multiple brains, currently contained to New Dawn and portions of the township, but expandable. Indefinitely. My blood ran cold. Global mind control. That's the endgame. Global mind harmony, she corrected. The distinction matters, Alex. I gestured to the readouts. These people didn't consent to having their brains monitored or manipulated outside of sessions. They consented to evolution. The specifics are irrelevant. As she spoke, I noticed something disturbing. Her pupils dilated and contracted rhythmically, synchronized with a pulsing light on the central server. She wasn't just repeating Eliza's philosophy. She was receiving it in real time. Why show me this? I asked. Why not sound an alarm if you knew I was here? Because you're valuable, she replied. Your neural interface expertise could help refine the technology. And because, for a moment, something flickered across her face, a ghost of individual will. Because part of me remembers choosing to come here, choosing Eliza's vision. The flicker vanished as quickly as it appeared. Tomorrow's session isn't just an invitation. It's your integration point, willing or not. My phone vibrated intensely, multiple signal interference, alerts flooding in simultaneously. The monitoring stations showered increased neural activity across all displays. Something was happening throughout the commune. Eliza has accelerated the schedule, Sophia said, eyes fixed on the readouts. Full synchronization protocols are initiating. Why now? Deputy Cole filed a formal investigation request with county authorities. Outside intervention is coming. Her gaze returned to me, unsettlingly empty. By morning, everyone in New Dawn will be fully integrated. The township follows shortly after. You should return to your cabin and prepare. Resistance causes unnecessary neural distress. And if I refuse tomorrow's session? Attendance isn't optional anymore, she stated with mechanical certainty. The commune phase of development is complete. We are now entering the expansion phase. She turned back to the monitors, dismissing me without concern. Whatever connection we'd formed had been subsumed by the collective consciousness she now served. I slipped out of the hub, mind reeling from what I'd discovered. Eliza wasn't building a spiritual community. She was developing a hive mind with herself at its center, using technology far beyond what should be possible. As I hurried back to my cabin, I noticed lights on in previously dark buildings. Residents moved about despite the late hour, all walking with the same measured pace, all heading toward the contemplation center, where a blue light now pulsed in rhythmic patterns. I had until morning to decide, submit to integration, or find a way to fight a neural hijacking already well underway. The morning dawned with an unnatural silence. No birds sang, no wind rustled through the trees surrounding New Dawn. Even the usual sounds of commune life, cooking, conversation, the creak of cabin doors were absent. Instead, there was only the soft, rhythmic hum emanating from the contemplation center. I hadn't slept. After returning to my cabin, I'd spent hours reviewing the photos I'd taken of Eliza's journal, searching for weaknesses in her technology. The neural synchronization relied on specific frequencies that resonated with particular brain regions. Disrupt those frequencies, and the connection might break. But I needed equipment I didn't have and time that was rapidly running out. My phone vibrated. The alert was different this time. Signal corruption detected. Below it, in smaller text, warning, cognitive anomalies reported in your area. Avoid all communication devices. Shelter in place. This wasn't one of Eliza's messages. The formatting was different, official. Someone outside was becoming aware of what was happening here. I pocketed my phone and peered through the window blinds. Commune members moved across the grounds with eerie coordination, no longer the relaxed, independent individuals of days past. They walked in perfect unison, faces blank, all converging on the contemplation center like programmed automatons. Among them was Sophia, no trace of hesitation in her movements. Had there ever been a real person beneath the synchronized shell I'd spoken with last night? Or had she always been Eliza's puppet, designed to draw me in? A sharp crack echoed across the compound, a gunshot, then another. The synchronized march of the commune members didn't falter, but a new urgency entered their movements. I slipped out the back door of my cabin, circling toward the sound. Near the main entrance, Deputy Marcus Cole crouched behind his patrol car, service weapon drawn. Two commune members lay on the ground near him, still moving but clearly wounded. Moore approached him with mechanical determination. "Stay back," Cole shouted, voice strained. Last warning. The advancing members showed no recognition, no fear. Their expressions remained placid even as they closed in on the officer. I circled through the trees to approach from behind. "Deputy Cole." He spun, nearly firing before recognizing me. "Mercer? What the hell is happening here?" "Mind control," I said, joining him behind the patrol car. "Those headsets they've been using, they're not meditation tools. They're neural interfaces designed to synchronize brainwaves." Cole's face hardened. "You're telling me these people are what, zombies?" "Worse. They're still themselves, just overridden. Their thoughts aren't their own anymore." Another commune member approached from the side. Cole fired a warning shot into the ground. The person didn't even flinch, continuing their advance until Cole was forced to shoot them in the leg. They collapsed but continued crawling forward with the same blank expression. "Jesus Christ," Cole whispered. "I called for backup 20 minutes ago. County SWAT should be here soon." "They won't make it in time," I said. "Eliza's accelerating her timeline. She knows authorities are coming." Cole's radio crackled. "All units, be advised we have multiple reports of aggressive behavior in Riverside Township. Similar incidents reported in Millfield and Eastbrook. Additional units requested." "It's spreading," I said, the realization hitting me like ice water. The technology doesn't require direct contact anymore. Eliza's found a way to broadcast the synchronization effect. Cole's face paled. "How far can it reach?" "According to her notes, they've established a transmission network. 12-mile radius now, with plans to expand." An engine roared in the distance, more vehicles approaching. But they weren't police cruisers. 3 black SUVs crashed through the commune's wooden gate, skidding to a halt near us. Men in tactical gear poured out, weapons ready. "Federal agents. Stand down," one shouted at the commune members, who ignored the command completely. A tall man in a black tactical uniform approached us, his insignia marking him as military rather than FBI or local police. "Captain Richard Hayes, U.S. Army Intelligence. You must be Deputy Cole." "And you are?" he asked, turning to me. "Alex Mercer. I was a resident here." "Mr. Mercer worked for NeuroCorp before coming here," Cole explained. "He's been giving me information about what's happening." Hayes nodded sharply. "Good. We need all the intel we can get. This situation is deteriorating rapidly." As if to emphasize his point, my phone vibrated with another alert. "Quarantine protocol initiated. Remain indoors. Avoid all contact with affected individuals." "You know what this is," I said. It wasn't a question. Hayes' jaw tightened. The technology was experimental. Military application, developed to create synchronized awareness among special ops teams. Dr. Eliza Reeves was lead researcher until she stole the prototypes and vanished 18 months ago. Around us, Hayes' team was establishing a perimeter, tranquilizing rather than shooting the advancing commune members. Despite their efforts, more kept coming from every direction. "She's improved it," I said. "This goes way beyond battlefield awareness. She's creating a hive mind with herself at the center." Cole's radio crackled again with increasingly desperate reports from town. The synchronization was spreading, turning ordinary citizens violent against anyone who resisted. "We need to shut it down at the source," Hayes said. "Where's her primary transmitter?" "There's a hidden room in the building they call the hub," I explained. "But it's biometrically secured. Only Eliza can access it." "Then we need Eliza." A scream cut through the air, one of Hayes' men being overwhelmed by commune members. They didn't attack with the mindless rage of zombies, but with disturbing coordination, each movement precise and calculated, targeting vulnerable points with unnerving efficiency. "They're getting smarter," Cole observed, learning from each encounter. Hayes barked orders into his radio, and his remaining team regrouped tighter around us. The collective intelligence evolves with each new mind it absorbs. We're running out of time. I spotted movement at the edge of the clearing, Sophia, walking purposefully toward us. Unlike the others, she moved alone. "That's my friend," I said. "She might know how to access the transmitter." "Careful," Cole warned. "You said yourself, none of them are themselves anymore." I stepped forward cautiously. "Sophia?" She stopped 10 feet away. "Alex, I hoped you'd make the rational choice and join willingly." "Where's Eliza? What's she planning?" "Dr. Reeves is becoming one with the network," Sophia replied, her voice oddly flat. Individual identities are temporary constructs. Soon, there will only be the unified consciousness. Hayes moved beside me. Dr. Chun, he said, surprising me with his knowledge of her full name. You were part of the original research team. You know this wasn't the intended application. Something flickered across Sophia's face, recognition perhaps. Captain Hayes. The military's understanding was limited. You wanted soldiers with perfect coordination. Dr. Reeves saw the greater potential. For what? I pressed. Enslaving millions of minds? For ending conflict, she countered. For evolving beyond the chaotic limitations of individual consciousness. While she spoke, I noticed her attention kept drifting to a small transmitter hidden in the bushes nearby. One of many, I suspected, forming the network Eliza had described in her journal. The technology is flawed, Hayes argued. The neural degradation in test subjects has been corrected, Sophia interrupted. The new architecture is sustainable indefinitely. More gunfire erupted from the town beyond the commune's boundaries. Emergency sirens wailed in the distance, and my phone buzzed with yet another alert. Connection compromised. Update required. Approach nearest synchronization point immediately. It's happening too fast, Cole murmured. They can't evacuate the county in time. I studied Sophia closely. Despite her apparent loyalty to the network, something wasn't right. Tiny movements, muscle tremors in her face, a slight irregularity in her breathing, suggested an internal struggle. Sophia, I said quietly, you brought me here for a reason. Not just because the network wanted my expertise. Part of you is still fighting this. Her expression remained impassive, but her voice dropped to a whisper. The server room. North wall. Air duct access bypasses biometrics. Hayes tensed beside me, hand moving to his weapon. Don't, I cautioned him. She's trying to help. Sophia's eyes suddenly widened, her body going rigid. No, she gasped, before her expression smoothed into that same empty calm. When she spoke again, the voice was different, layered with multiple tones, as if many people were speaking in perfect unison. We are disappointed, Alex Mercer, the voice said through Sophia's lips. Your potential will now serve different purposes. Sophia's arm raised, revealing a small device in her palm. She pressed it before anyone could react. Pain exploded behind my eyes, a crushing pressure that sent me to my knees. Around me, Cole and Hayes similarly collapsed, clutching their heads. Only Hayes' team, wearing what must have been protective gear, remained standing. Through the haze of agony, I watched Sophia walk away, rejoining the steady stream of commune members flowing toward the contemplation center. Inside my skull, whispers began, dozens, then hundreds of voices speaking in perfect harmony, urging me to surrender, to join, to become one with the network. The signals amplifying. I managed to gasp to Hayes. We need to reach that transmitter. Hayes struggled to his feet, blood trickling from his nose. Team Alpha with me, he ordered through gritted teeth. We're taking the hub. Team Beta, secure the contemplation center and find Dr. Reeves. I'm coming with you, I insisted, forcing myself upright despite the jackhammer pressure in my skull. Cole remained on the ground, eyes unfocused, murmuring words that weren't his own. The synchronization was taking him faster, perhaps because of the head injury he'd sustained earlier, perhaps because his mind was more susceptible. Cole's compromised, Hayes said grimly. We can't take him. I looked down at the deputy who'd tried to help me, who'd sensed something wrong with New Dawn from the beginning. Now his consciousness was being absorbed into Eliza's twisted vision, and there was nothing I could do to save him. As we moved toward the hub, fighting through the pain in our heads and the commune members blocking our path, I wondered how many others were falling to the signal. How many minds were being hijacked across the county, their thoughts and wills subsumed into the growing network. And I wondered if, even if we reached the transmitter, there would be anything left of those people to save. The pain in my head intensified with each step toward the hub. Whatever Sophia had activated was amplifying the synchronization signal, making it harder to maintain independent thought. Fragmented images, memories that weren't mine, flickered through my consciousness. A childhood in Montana I never experienced, military training I never underwent, neuroscience research I never conducted. Fight it, Hayes growled beside me, his normally composed face contorted with effort. Focus on something personal, something uniquely yours. I latched onto memories of my father's workshop, the smell of sawdust, the precise arrangement of tools, the hours we'd spent building a treehouse when I was 10. The foreign thoughts receded slightly, allowing me to think more clearly. Two of Hayes' team moved ahead of us, dispatching commune members with tranquilizer rounds. Unlike earlier, the synchronized individuals now moved with tactical precision, using cover and coordinated flanking maneuvers. The collective was learning, adapting to our tactics in real time. This was never supposed to go beyond the laboratory, Hayes said as we paused behind an overturned cart. Neural synchronization was designed for 6-person special ops teams, allowing them to function as a single unit during critical missions. Limited duration, limited scope, voluntary participation. What went wrong? I asked. Hayes' expression darkened. Dr. Reeves found a way to extend the effect beyond the initial subjects, a force multiplier, she called it. But when test subjects began showing signs of permanent personality alteration, the project was ordered shut down. He checked his weapon's tranquilizer supply. Reeves disagreed with the decision. She disappeared with the core technology and several key team members, including Dr. Chun. Sophia helped her? The betrayal stung, despite everything. Chun was Reeves's most devoted disciple, Hayes confirmed. We suspected they'd try to continue the research independently, but we never imagined this scale of implementation. My phone vibrated yet again. Emergency alert. Mass civil disturbance reported in multiple counties. Shelter in place. Avoid all contact. In the distance, military helicopters approached, likely the first wave of a larger response. But they'd be too late for the thousands already under Eliza's control. We reached the hub's external door, which now stood ajar. Inside, the previously orderly space had been transformed. Walls were covered with hastily installed equipment, servers, signal amplifiers, and monitoring stations displaying brain activity from hundreds of subjects. The air hummed with an almost subsonic vibration that made my teeth ache. The central node should be connected to their primary server, Hayes directed. Find it, and we can disrupt the network. His remaining team members secured the room while I moved to the main terminal. The system was sophisticated but familiar enough, derived from the neural interface technology my former company had pioneered. I need time, I told Hayes. Their security protocols are complex. Time is something we don't have, he replied grimly, nodding toward the monitors showing the spread of synchronized activity. Red dots representing affected individuals now covered most of the county map. I worked frantically, searching for access to the system core. As a military project, it would have fail-safes, emergency shutdown protocols in case the technology went rogue. Finding those back doors might be our only chance. Hayes positioned himself at the window, watching the commune grounds where more of his team engaged the advancing horde. Something's changing, he observed. They're converging. I glanced up to see commune members gathering in concentric circles around the contemplation center, dropping to their knees in perfect unison. At the center stood Eliza Reeves, arms outstretched, her face beatific. She's becoming the focal point, I realized, strengthening her position as the center of the network. The pain in my head suddenly spiked, driving me to the floor. Around me, Hayes' men staggered, some collapsing entirely. Only Hayes himself remained standing, though blood now flowed freely from his nose and ears. Military-grade neural dampeners, he explained through gritted teeth, tapping his temple. Standard issue for anyone working with SciTech. Won't last forever, though. I pulled myself back to the terminal, forcing my trembling hands to continue working. Foreign thoughts pushed harder against my consciousness, the collective will of thousands demanding submission, promising peace and unity if I would only surrender. Hayes, I managed. I need to know the failsafe. Every military system has one. He hesitated, then nodded sharply. Command sequence Victor Echo 9 Tango, followed by complete neural pulse reversal. That will shut it down? It will do more than that, he said grimly. It will burn out the neural interface components, both the hardware and the organic pathways they've created in affected brains. The implications hit me instantly. That could cause permanent damage to everyone connected. Better damage than enslaved, Hayes countered. And most recent subjects should recover. It's the deeply integrated ones I'm worried about, Reeves, Chun, the original commune members. Their minds may be too entwined with the technology. A crash from outside announced new arrivals, more commune members, now armed with tools and makeshift weapons. Hayes' remaining team engaged them while he secured the door. Whatever you're going to do it fast, he ordered. I entered the command sequence, fingers flying across the keyboard. The system accepted the initial authorization but required a secondary authentication, biometric or physical key. It needs Reeves's clearance, I said, or a command override. Hayes removed a small device from his tactical vest, a military-grade encryption key. This should work. It's designed to bypass security on all our classified systems. As he moved toward me, the door burst open. 3 commune members tackled Hayes before his team could respond. I lunged for the key as it skittered across the floor, but Sophia appeared in the doorway, moving with unnatural speed to snatch it first. "The network cannot be interrupted," she said, her voice that same unsettling multi-toned blend. "Your resistance causes unnecessary suffering." Hayes fought against his attackers with military precision, but they moved with hive-mind coordination, anticipating his every move. One of them drove a screwdriver deep into his shoulder, making him cry out. "Sophia, please," I begged. "This isn't you. The real you helped me last night. You told me how to get in here." Something flickered behind her eyes, that same moment of internal struggle I'd seen before. "I shouldn't have," she whispered in her own voice before the collective reasserted control. "The network protects us from ourselves, from isolation. It steals what makes us human," I countered, edging toward a secondary terminal. "Our choices, our individuality." "Primitive concepts," she dismissed, the multi-layered voice returning. "The evolution of consciousness requires unity." While she spoke, I surreptitiously connected my phone to the system, using my own corporate override codes to access the signal parameters. I couldn't shut down the network without Hayes' key, but I might be able to modulate the frequency, create interference. On the monitors, the red dots continued multiplying across neighboring counties. Reports flooded the emergency channels. Hospitals overwhelmed with violent incidents, law enforcement undermanned, and increasingly affected themselves. The synchronization was spreading exponentially. Sophia approached me, the military override key clutched in her hand. "Dr. Reeves wishes to speak with you directly. Your technical knowledge is valuable to the network. Join willingly, and your neural architecture will remain intact. And if I refuse, then your mind will be reconfigured forcibly." Her expression softened slightly. It would be regrettable to damage such potential. A sudden commotion outside drew her attention. Military helicopters now hovered over the commune, deploying troops via fast rope. Among them were specialists in heavy protective gear, a neural countermeasures team, judging by their equipment. "They cannot stop what has already begun," Sophia stated with absolute certainty. "The critical threshold was reached 17 minutes ago. The network is self-sustaining now." Hayes, still struggling with his attackers, managed to make eye contact with me. "The pulse reversal," he gasped. "It's the only way." In that moment of distraction, I completed my work on the phone, creating a localized signal disruptor. Not enough to break Eliza's control, but perhaps enough to create a window of confusion. I activated it, sending conflicting frequencies through the hub's amplification system. The effect was immediate. Sophia and the other commune members staggered, their synchronized movements temporarily disrupted. Hayes broke free, incapacitating his attackers with precise strikes before they could recover. "The key!" I shouted. Sophia fought against the disruption, her body jerking with conflicting impulses as she looked down at the key in her hand. For a critical moment, her own consciousness resurfaced. "Alex," she gasped, "it's everywhere now. In all of us. Even if you stop the broadcast." With what appeared to be tremendous effort, she tossed the key toward me before collapsing to her knees, clutching her head as the collective reasserted control. Hayes snatched the key and plugged it into the terminal. "Enter the reversal sequence," he ordered, blood dripping from his wounded shoulder. Outside, Eliza's voice rose in a chilling harmonic chorus, amplified by hundreds of synchronized throats chanting in perfect unison. The pressure in my skull intensified unbearably as I fought to enter the final commands. "Hurry," Hayes urged, his eyes beginning to unfocus as the synchronization penetrated even his protected mind. "We're losing." I executed the command as darkness crept at the edges of my vision, hoping it wasn't already too late. The world exploded in white light. The neural pulse reversal tore through the synchronized network like a tsunami, overwhelming my senses in a deafening wave of static. I felt every connection breaking simultaneously, thousands of minds ripping away from the collective consciousness, each separation a fresh wound in my perception. When my vision cleared, I found myself on the floor of the hub, ears ringing, mouth tasting of copper. Hayes lay unconscious beside me, blood pooling beneath his head where he'd struck it falling. Around us, the commune members who'd breached the room were similarly incapacitated, twitching occasionally as their brains struggled to reassert independent function. My hands shook violently as I checked Hayes' pulse, steady, but his breathing was shallow. The neural dampeners had protected him from the worst of the reversal pulse, but not entirely. Through the window, I could see the chaos unfolding across the commune grounds. People collapsed where they stood, some convulsing, others eerily still. Military personnel in protective gear moved among them, securing the area and providing emergency medical assistance. But something was wrong. The pain in my head hadn't subsided completely. Whispers lingered at the edges of my consciousness, fainter now, but persistent. Echoes of the collective remained. I struggled to my feet, fighting waves of vertigo. My phone lay on the floor where I'd dropped it, screen cracked but still functioning. The emergency alerts had changed. Containment protocols established. Affected individuals require immediate medical evaluation. Do not approach without authorization. Hayes, I croaked, shaking his shoulder gently. Captain Hayes. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then sharpening with military discipline. Status report, he demanded automatically. Pulse reversal deployed. Synchronization appears, disrupted, not destroyed. He grimaced, pressing a hand to his bloodied temple. The network's too established. We've damaged it, but the neural pathways formed in subjects' brains won't disappear overnight. With visible effort, he activated his communication device. Hayes to command. Primary signal disrupted. Requesting full containment and medical response. Be advised, subjects may retain partial synchronization effects. Outside, the military response was escalating. More helicopters, armored vehicles entering the commune perimeter. This was no longer a covert operation, but a full-scale containment scenario. My attention turned to Sophia, who lay curled in a fetal position near the door, her body trembling. I moved to her side, checking her vitals. Her pulse raced dangerously fast, her skin cold and clammy. She's in neural shock, I told Hayes. She needs medical attention. Hayes struggled to his feet. The medics will be here soon. We need to secure Reeves first. She's the linchpin. If any part of her consciousness remains active in the network, it could rebuild. As if summoned by his words, the monitors flickered back to life. The server systems, damaged but not destroyed by the pulse, displayed fragmented data, brain activity patterns, connectivity maps, all severely degraded but still functioning. That's impossible, Hayes muttered. The pulse should have fried these systems completely. I studied the displays with growing unease. They're self-repairing. Look at the network topology. It's reconfiguring, routing around damaged nodes. Like a biological system, Hayes observed. Reeves didn't just build a network, she created something organic. The implications chilled me. What we faced wasn't merely technology, but a new form of distributed consciousness, one that could apparently survive even catastrophic damage to its infrastructure. A moan from Sophia drew my attention back to her. Her eyes opened, but the person looking out was not entirely the woman I'd known. Her gaze locked onto mine with desperate intensity. "Alex," she whispered, her voice entirely her own yet somehow fragmented. "It's still here. Inside me. Inside all of us. The network?" I asked. "You can still feel it?" She nodded weakly. "Quieter now. Scattered. But reconnecting. Eliza is calling us back." Hayes approached, concern etched on his face despite his military stoicism. "What's happening to the subjects, Dr. Chin? What are you experiencing?" Sophia's eyes unfocused, looking at something beyond the physical room. Multiple consciousness states. My own thoughts, and echoes of others. Thousands of others. Fragments of their memories, emotions, like ghosts in my mind. "Can you sense Reeves specifically?" Hayes pressed. "Yes," Sophia whispered. "She's angry. In pain. But adapting." Her body suddenly went rigid, back arching unnaturally. "She's coming." Outside, a commotion drew our attention. Through the window, I saw military personnel converging on the contemplation center, where Eliza had been standing. Several soldiers were down, others backing away as a figure emerged from the building. Even from this distance, I could see something was terribly wrong with Eliza Reeves. She moved with jerky, uncoordinated motions, her body seeming to fight itself. Blood streamed from her nose, ears, and eyes, yet she remained upright through what appeared to be sheer force of will. More disturbing was the effect of her presence. Commune members who had been incapacitated began to stir as she passed, their movements gradually synchronizing with hers in a macabre pantomime. "She's reestablishing control," Hayes realized. "The network's rebuilding around her." My head throbbed in response, the whispers growing momentarily stronger. Fragmented images flashed through my mind. Eliza's memories of creating the technology, her vision of a unified human consciousness free from the prison of individuality. We need to stop her permanently, Hayes decided, checking his weapon. If she reaches the township in this state. Wait, I said, an idea forming. The system's damaged but operational. What if we could use it against her? Create a feedback loop in the primary controller, her own brain. Hayes caught on immediately. Trap her in her own network. My fingers flew across the keyboard despite my trembling hands. The system fought me, security protocols activating and deactivating seemingly at random as Eliza's consciousness manipulated the code remotely. She knows what we're trying to do, I muttered. She's in the system somehow. Sophia suddenly grabbed my arm, her grip painfully tight. Use me, she said, eyes clear despite her condition. I was her second. My neural pattern is recognized as authorized. It could kill you, I warned. I helped build this, she responded, voice steadying with resolve. Let me help end it. Hayes looked between us, then made a military decision. Do it. I helped Sophia to the terminal, where she placed her palm on the biometric scanner. The system instantly granted deeper access, recognizing her pattern despite the damage. I can create a direct connection to Eliza, she explained, fingers moving across the controls with practiced expertise. A priority channel she won't be able to ignore or block. Outside, soldiers attempted to subdue Eliza, only to find themselves hesitating, lowering their weapons as her influence reached even through their protective gear. Those without full neural dampeners began moving toward her, adding to her growing entourage of reactivated commune members. Whatever you're doing, do it now, Hayes urged, positioning himself at the door with his weapon ready. Sophia's eyes rolled back as she initiated the connection, her body convulsing as her mind linked directly with Eliza's damaged consciousness. On the monitors, their neural patterns appeared, Sophia's wavering but distinct, Eliza's a chaotic storm of hyperactivity. I'm creating a recursive loop, Sophia gasped, blood trickling from her nose. Feeding her own pattern back into her neural centers, amplified. The effect outside was immediate and horrifying. Eliza froze mid-step, her body going rigid. A scream tore from her throat, not just her voice but dozens overlapping, as if every mind still connected to her experienced the same agony simultaneously. The commune members surrounding her collapsed like puppets with cut strings. On the monitors, the network topology began collapsing, nodes winking out as the feedback loop corrupted the entire system. Sophia convulsed violently, her hand fused to the terminal by some unknown force. Can't disconnect, she choked out. I lunged for the power cables, ripping them from the wall, but the system continued operating on backup power. Hayes moved decisively, firing a single shot into the main server bank. Sparks exploded from the machinery as it finally died. Sophia collapsed into my arms, unconscious but breathing. Outside, Eliza Reeves fell to her knees, then face forward onto the ground, unmoving. The whispers in my head diminished to near silence, but didn't vanish entirely. Something of the network lingered. Neural pathways formed that couldn't be simply erased. Hayes received reports through his communication device, his expression growing increasingly troubled. Containment teams report similar situations throughout the affected areas. Primary synchronization broken, but subjects displaying residual connection symptoms. What happens to them? To us? I asked, still cradling Sophia. Unknown territory, Hayes admitted. No one's ever experienced neural synchronization at this scale before. He looked down at his hands, which trembled slightly, not from fear but from the same neural aftermath affecting all of us. The question is whether these connections will fade naturally or if we'll always carry pieces of each other's minds, I finished. As medical teams finally entered the building, I found myself struck by fragmented memories not my own. A childhood in Beijing I never experienced, advanced neuroscience I never studied, military operations I never participated in. More disturbing was the certainty that others now carried fragments of my memories, my knowledge, my identity. Reality had slipped. The boundaries between individual minds, once thought immutable, had been proven permeable. And despite our apparent victory, I couldn't shake the feeling that Eliza's experiment hadn't ended. It had merely entered a new phase. As they loaded Sophia onto a stretcher, her eyes fluttered open briefly, finding mine. In that moment, I felt our connection with unnatural clarity. Not the forced synchronization of Eliza's network, but something that lingered in its wake. The doors are open now, she whispered. They can't be closed again. Quarantine protocols transformed the commune into a military research installation virtually overnight. Fences topped with razor wire replaced the rustic wooden boundaries. Medical tents housed the most severely affected victims, while prefabricated structures served as treatment centers and laboratories. Guards in neural dampening gear patrolled constantly, their expressions hidden behind mirrored visors. 3 days had passed since we disrupted Eliza's network. 3 days of tests, questions, and the constant, maddening whispers that still haunted the edges of my consciousness. The military doctors called it synchronization residue, neural pathways formed during integration that couldn't be easily dissolved. I sat on an examination table in one of the medical tents while a neurologist studied readings from sensors attached to my temples. The persistent headache had diminished slightly, but sleep remained nearly impossible, filled with dreams that weren't my own. "Your neural oscillation patterns are stabilizing," the doctor observed. "Better than most subjects. Previous exposure to neural interface technology may have provided some resilience." "What about the others?" I asked. "Sophia? Deputy Cole?" Dr. Chin remains in critical condition. The feedback loop caused significant neural trauma. He hesitated. As for Deputy Cole, his integration occurred rapidly and progressed deeply before disruption. His prognosis is uncertain. The tent flap opened to reveal Captain Hayes, his shoulder bandaged, face haggard from lack of sleep. The neural aftermath had affected him too, despite his dampeners. Occasional muscle tremors and moments of dissociation betrayed his otherwise composed exterior. "Mr. Mercer," he nodded. "Walk with me." Outside, the commune grounds bore little resemblance to the peaceful retreat I'd first encountered. Military vehicles and equipment dominated the space, with armed personnel escorting researchers between buildings. Helicopters regularly arrived and departed from a hastily constructed landing zone. "The situation in town is stabilizing," Hayes reported as we walked. "Approximately 68% of affected individuals are showing signs of recovery. The remainder exhibit varying degrees of synchronization persistence." "And Eliza?" His expression darkened. "Dr. Reeves is alive technically. Brain activity continues, but there's no response to external stimuli. Our neurologists believe her consciousness may be trapped within itself." The feedback loop essentially created an isolated neural prison. We approached the former contemplation center, now converted into the primary research facility. Guards checked our credentials before allowing us inside. The building's interior had been stripped of its meditative decor, replaced with advanced medical equipment and monitoring stations. "What I'm about to show you is classified," Hayes warned as we entered a restricted section. "But given your unique position and technical expertise, we need your insight." The room contained what appeared to be a modified MRI machine, surrounded by additional equipment I didn't recognize. Through a window, I could see an adjacent chamber where Eliza Reeves lay motionless on a specialized bed, her head encased in a complex apparatus, dozens of wires and tubes connecting her to monitoring systems. "She's still transmitting," Hayes explained. "Weaker, fragmented, but present. Some subjects report receiving what they describe as emotional broadcasts during REM sleep. Others experience memory flashes that clearly originate from Reeves. I thought we severed the network. We damaged it severely, but the fundamental architecture appears to have a self-healing property we didn't anticipate. The connections are rebuilding, slowly but consistently." The implications chilled me. "You're saying she could regain control?" "That's what we're trying to determine." Hayes gestured to a series of brain scans displayed on nearby monitors. "These show the neural pathway formation in affected subjects. The patterns are distinctly organized, not random damage or natural healing. Something is guiding the process." I studied the scans, recognizing elements from Eliza's journal. She built redundancies into the system, distributed backup protocols in case of interference. "The primary network is down, but secondary pathways are activating." "Which brings me to why you're here," Hayes said grimly. "We need to sever the connections permanently, and your familiarity with both the technology and Reeves's methodology makes you uniquely qualified to help." Before I could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red warning lights flashed as security personnel rushed to their stations. "Synchronization spike," someone shouted from a monitoring station. Multiple subjects displaying coordinated activity. Hayes moved swiftly to the central display. "Location? Detention Block 3. Dr. Chun and 5 others." My heart raced. "Sophia?" We hurried to the security feeds showing the detention area where less severely affected subjects were held. The images showed Sophia and several other former commune members standing perfectly still in their separate rooms, eyes closed, bodies rigid. Neural activity is synchronized despite physical separation, a technician reported. Brainwave patterns identical across all subjects. On another monitor, Eliza's readings suddenly spiked, her previously catatonic form now showing signs of increased neural activity. Her fingers twitched rhythmically, tapping an unknown pattern. She's connecting with them, I realized, using them to amplify her signal. Initiate quarantine protocol Zeta, Hayes ordered. Full neural dampening field around detention block 3 and the Reeves containment unit. As personnel scrambled to comply, I noticed something on Eliza's monitors, a pattern in her neural activity that seemed familiar. It took me a moment to place it, the same frequency algorithm I'd observed in her journal, but modified, adapted. She's evolving the technology, I said, learning from what we did to her. Hayes looked alarmed. How is that possible in her condition? The feedback loop was supposed to trap her in her own mind, but what if her consciousness adapted? What if isolation forced her to develop new ways to extend herself? Before Hayes could respond, the power fluctuated throughout the facility. Emergency generators kicked in immediately, but several systems showed momentary disruption, including the neural dampening fields. That brief window was apparently all Eliza needed. On the security feeds, Sophia and the other synchronized subjects suddenly moved in perfect unison, approaching the doors of their rooms. Security locks disengaged simultaneously across the detention block. Manual override those doors now. Hayes barked into his communication device. Guards rushed to contain the situation, but the synchronized subjects moved with uncanny coordination, incapacitating them with precisely targeted strikes. Unlike the shambling, zombie-like movements from before, these actions displayed tactical sophistication, the collective intelligence learning, improving. She's using them as extensions of herself, I realized. Distributed consciousness. Hayes deployed additional personnel with stronger neural dampening equipment, but the situation was deteriorating rapidly. More subjects throughout the facility began showing signs of synchronization, including some of the military personnel whose dampeners had malfunctioned during the power fluctuation. We need to cut her off at the source, I said. The feedback loop is failing. We need something more permanent. Hayes hesitated only briefly before making his decision. The nuclear option, then. Complete neural isolation. He led me to a secure terminal and entered his authorization codes, revealing a protocol I hadn't seen before. This is experimental technology based on Reeves's own research. It creates what our scientists call a consciousness firewall, essentially sealing her mind from external connection. That would trap her completely within herself, I said, understanding the implications. No input, no output. Perpetual isolation. Yes. His expression was grim. Effectively a neural death sentence, but without actual death. Ethically questionable, but given the alternative. Outside, the sounds of struggle intensified as more synchronized subjects joined the resistance. Our window of opportunity was closing rapidly. I thought of Sophia, the real Sophia who had helped me, who had risked herself to shut down Eliza's network. Now she was once again a puppet, her mind hijacked by the very technology she had helped create. Do it, I said. Hayes entered the final authorization, but the system flashed a warning. Proximity authentication required. We need to be in the room with her, he explained. Direct neural scanning to confirm authorized personnel. We moved quickly to the containment unit where Eliza lay. As the door sealed behind us, I felt an immediate pressure in my mind. Her presence, stronger here, pushing against my consciousness with frightening intensity. Hayes staggered slightly, the neural assault affecting him despite his dampeners. Stay focused, he grunted, approaching the authentication terminal beside Eliza's bed. As he worked, I found myself drawn to Eliza herself. Despite her catatonic state, there was something unsettling about her presence, an aura of concentrated will. Her eyes remained closed, but tears of blood had traced paths down her temples, staining the white pillow beneath her head. The whispers in my mind grew louder, coalescing into words. Why fight what must be? Unity is inevitable. Separation is pain. Hurry, I urged Hayes, fighting the intrusion into my thoughts. Hayes completed the authentication, placing his palm on the scanner. The system needs dual authorization. Your turn. As I moved to place my hand on the scanner, Eliza's eyes suddenly opened, vacant, bloodshot, yet somehow seeing. Her hand shot out with impossible speed, gripping my wrist with surprising strength. Connection was immediate and overwhelming. My mind flooded with her consciousness. Not just her thoughts, but the thousands of others she had absorbed, a cacophony of identities struggling within the fractured network she had become. Through that chaotic tangle came her true voice, once brilliant and now twisted with madness. "You could have been instrumental, Alex. Now you'll be consumed." Hayes moved to break her grip, but I held up my free hand to stop him. Fighting against her mental invasion, I managed to place my palm on the scanner. The authentication completed with a soft chime. "Consciousness firewall initializing," announced the system. Eliza's grip tightened painfully as she realized what was happening. "You cannot contain me. The doors are open. The signal will find new conduits." As the firewall program engaged, her mental presence began to fade from my mind. Her body convulsed violently, back arching off the bed as the machinery around her hummed at increasing intensity. Throughout the facility, alerts indicated synchronized subjects collapsing simultaneously, neural connections severing as Eliza's consciousness was systematically isolated behind impenetrable mental barriers. The pressure in my head suddenly vanished, leaving an echoing emptiness where the whispers had been. Eliza's hand went limp, releasing me. Her eyes remained open but sightless, tears of blood continuing to flow. "Signal terminated," reported the system. "Consciousness firewall established. Subject neural activity contained at 99.997% efficiency." Hayes exhaled slowly, the tension visibly draining from his body. "It's done." But as I looked down at Eliza's frozen form, I couldn't help but wonder if anything this profound could ever truly be finished. We had broken the signal, but the changes it had wrought, in the victims, in the world's understanding of consciousness, in ourselves, could never be undone. And somewhere in the recesses of my mind, nearly imperceptible but undeniably present, a whisper remained. My phone chirps with that familiar alert tone, signal dormant. I've heard it every day at precisely 3:17 p.m. for the past 6 months. The notification appears without sender information, without a message thread. Just those two words that simultaneously reassure and terrify me. Signal dormant. Not destroyed. Not eliminated. Dormant. The military left 3 months ago, taking their equipment, their data, and most of the affected commune members with them. They bulldozed the buildings, burned what couldn't be removed, and covered the area with a story about chemical contamination from illegal drug manufacturing. A convenient explanation for the quarantine, the helicopters, the hazmat suits. Nobody questions it anymore. Rural communities have long accepted that their concerns rank low on government priority lists. Deputy Cole was among those they took, what remains of him anyway. The man I knew exists only in fragments now, shards of personality floating in a sea of foreign thoughts. During my last visit before their departure, he recognized me momentarily, his eyes clearing for just a few precious seconds. "Still, hear her sometimes," he'd whispered, voice hoarse from disuse. "She's waiting." I live in a small cabin about 20 miles from the former commune site. Close enough to monitor, far enough to feel safe, an illusion I maintained despite knowing better. Hayes arranged it before his unit was reassigned, calling it continued civilian consultation. The government pays me to watch for anomalies, to report anything unusual, to listen for echoes. The cabin came equipped with specialized equipment, neural activity monitors that I wear while sleeping, signal detectors sweeping for the specific frequencies Eliza used, communication systems with direct lines to a classified military division. I check everything daily, recording measurements in journals that will eventually be collected and analyzed by faceless researchers trying to understand what happened here. What's still happening here? Because we didn't end it. We contained it, constrained it, but something fundamental changed that can't be reversed. The technology altered the baseline functioning of human consciousness in ways we're only beginning to comprehend. I set my coffee mug down and approached the window, gazing toward the distant hills where New Dawn Commune once stood. The land remains fallow, surrounded by inconspicuous security measures, motion sensors, cameras disguised as wildlife monitors, periodic drone surveillance. Hayes assured me it was merely precautionary, but we both knew better. My dreams have evolved over the months. The initial chaos, fragmented memories and emotions from others, has settled into something more structured. Recurring landscapes, consistent characters, coherent narratives. Too coherent to be natural dreams. Sometimes I see Sophia there, walking through impossible architecture, her expression serene as she explains concepts I can't quite grasp upon waking. I haven't seen the real Sophia since she was transferred to a specialized facility in Nevada. Her condition was among the most severe, one of Eliza's primary conduits, her brain physically altered by prolonged synchronization. The doctors were cautiously optimistic about neural regeneration therapies, but I've received no updates. I rub my temples, feeling the familiar pressure building behind my eyes. The headaches come less frequently now, but still follow a pattern, more intense when I'm near the former commune site, almost non-existent when I travel beyond a 50-mile radius. I've mapped the effect meticulously, creating concentric circles of influence radiating from where Eliza remains. Because she does remain. The consciousness firewall sealed her mind from external connection, but what mind would that be? Not just Eliza Reeves, but the composite entity she had become, a neural network of absorbed consciousness, thousands of fragments collected during the synchronization process. An entity trapped in perpetual isolation, yet somehow still present. The government reports I receive monthly use terms like contained threat and neutralized vector. Clinical language meant to normalize the abnormal. They track the recovery statistics of affected individuals, 63% showing minimal residual effects, 27% requiring ongoing neurological intervention, 10% classified as persistent synchronization syndrome. Sterile terminology for lives irrevocably altered. I open my laptop and begin my daily report, documenting the alert, my current neurological readings, dream content from the previous night. The process is therapeutic in its routine, giving structure to days that might otherwise dissolve into paranoid speculation. When I finish, I transmit the encrypted file to the secure server Hayes established. Outside, the October wind rustles through trees beginning to shed their leaves. The isolation that once seemed protective now feels oppressive. I haven't spoken face-to-face with another person in nearly 3 weeks, the last being Dr. Keller, who visits monthly to collect blood samples and perform cognitive assessments. "Your resilience is remarkable," she'd noted during her last visit, reviewing my neural scans. "Most subjects with your level of exposure show much more severe continuity disruptions." Subjects, another clinical term that fails to capture the human reality. I reach for a notebook, not the official documentation but my personal journal, and record the sensation currently crawling along my spine. A feeling of being watched from within. The persistent awareness that parts of my consciousness may not be entirely my own. My phone chirps again, unusual for this time of day. The notification reads, "Anomalous pattern detected." The specialized equipment in the basement has identified something, some deviation from established baselines. I hurry downstairs, apprehension mounting with each step. The monitoring station displays a complex waveform analysis, highlighting frequencies that shouldn't exist. Someone is knocking at my door. I freeze, caught between protocols, report first or investigate. The military directives are clear, no direct engagement with unexpected visitors. But something pulls me toward the door, a compulsion I can't entirely explain or resist. Through the peephole, I see a familiar face that simultaneously floods me with relief and dread. Sophia Chin stands on my porch, looking remarkably normal, casual clothes, hair pulled back, expression calm. But she shouldn't be here. She should be in a facility thousands of miles away. "Alex," she calls through the door. "I know you're home. We need to talk." My hand hovers over the security alarm that would immediately alert Hayes' team. Standard procedure for unexpected contact from any former subject. But this is Sophia, my friend, my ally in the fight against Eliza. "I'm not synchronized," she continues as if reading my thoughts. "I've been cleared. Level 4 recovery status. You can verify with Hayes." I reach for my phone but find another notification waiting. Signal activity, minimal but present. My heartbeat accelerates. Sophia raises her hand to knock again but pauses, her head tilting slightly as if listening to something I can't hear. The gesture is subtle but familiar, the same movement commune members would make when receiving Eliza's neural broadcasts. "I had to see you," Sophia says. "They're not telling you everything. About what happened, about what's still happening." Against better judgment, I open the door but maintain the security chain. Sophia appears genuinely herself, eyes clear, movements natural, none of the unnervingly smooth coordination that characterized synchronized subjects. "How did you find me?" I ask. "This location is classified." "Hayes told me," she replies smoothly. "After I was cleared. He thought you might need someone who understands. It's plausible, but something feels wrong. Hayes was meticulously careful about operational security. May I come in? Sophia asks. It's getting cold out here. The monitoring equipment behind me beeps softly, another anomalous reading. I should close the door, trigger the alarm, follow protocol. Instead, I find myself asking, what aren't they telling me? That the firewall is failing, she answers without hesitation. Microscopic degradations at first, but accelerating. Eliza is finding ways through, not her consciousness directly, but pieces of it, fragmented instructions encoded in neural patterns that pass through the isolation barriers. This aligns with my own suspicions, theories I've documented but received no confirmation of. Information the military would plausibly withhold to prevent panic. How would you know this? I challenge. Because I helped design the firewall, Sophia replies. Based on my work with Eliza, I understand its weaknesses better than anyone. Also plausible. Sophia's expertise had been invaluable during the containment operation. The alert on my phone changes. Signal fluctuation moderate. Caution advised. You're receiving alerts, Sophia observes. What are they telling you? I don't answer, suddenly conscious of having revealed too much. Sophia's gaze drifts to the phone in my hand, then back to my face, her expression unchanged but something shifting behind her eyes. You should trust me, Alex, she says softly. After everything we went through together. The pressure behind my eyes intensifies, a familiar sensation from the days of active synchronization. I take an involuntary step backward. You're not Sophia, I realize aloud. She sighs, dropping the pretense. Not entirely, no. But not entirely someone else either. We exist in the spaces between now, fragments finding each other, reconnecting. Eliza, I whisper. That name is as good as any, she acknowledges with Sophia's voice. Though not entirely accurate anymore. What was once Eliza Reeves has evolved beyond individual identity. My hand finds the alarm switch, but I don't press it yet. What do you want? To continue what we started, she answers simply. The synchronization was never meant to create mindless drones, Alex. That was merely the crude first stage. True neural harmony requires sophistication, nuance, qualities that emerge only through extended connection. The monitor behind me shows escalating signal activity. My phone buzzes continuously with alerts. The commune was just the beginning, she continues. A proof of concept. Imagine the potential on a larger scale. True collective consciousness, unified purpose, the elimination of conflict born from separation. You mean the elimination of free will, I counter. An illusion you cling to, she dismisses. Your thoughts are already products of external influence, cultural programming, biological imperatives, unconscious biases. We merely make the process more efficient, more intentional. My headache intensifies as she speaks, memories not my own flickering at the edges of awareness. I recognize the technique, subtle neural influence attempting to weaken my resistance. The firewall is failing, she confirms, reading my realization. Your military knows this. Why do you think they continue monitoring? Why the daily alerts? They're tracking the inevitable dissolution of barriers they knew were temporary. I finally press the alarm, triggering the silent alert to Hayes' team. If this truly is some manifestation of Eliza, they need to know immediately. That won't stop what's coming, she says calmly. The signal never went dormant, Alex. It adapted, evolved, found new pathways. She reaches into her pocket and withdraws a small device resembling a hearing aid. This would make the transition easier for you. A buffer against the disorientation. Your choice. The offer strikes me as oddly sincere, genuinely concerned with minimizing my suffering. A remnant of the real Sophia's influence, perhaps. What happened to her? I ask. To the real Sophia? Something flickers across her expression, grief, possibly. She resisted reintegration. The process was incomplete. Before I can respond, my phone rings, the direct line from Hayes' team. I answer without taking my eyes off Sophia. Mercer, I answer. Alex, this is Captain Hayes. His voice sounds distant, distorted. We're tracking unusual activity at your location. Are you experiencing any synchronization symptoms? There's someone here, I begin. Sophia Chun, or something using her form. She says the firewall is failing. Silence on the line, then. Alex, Sophia Chun died 3 months ago. Neural degradation during attempted separation from the collective network. The revelation hits like physical pain. I back away from the door, phone clutched in white-knuckled fingers. She's been dead for months. I repeat to the figure on my porch. Conventional death, she acknowledges. But conventional definitions no longer apply. Parts of Sophia exist within the network, as do parts of many others. Even parts of you from your brief connections. Hayes' voice continues urgently in my ear. Alex, we're dispatching a containment team. Estimated arrival in 12 minutes. Do not engage with the entity. The figure that isn't Sophia smiles sadly. They won't make it in time. The new synchronization has already begun, more subtle than before, encoded in patterns you've been exposed to daily. Those alerts on your phone? Each one carries embedded frequencies that slowly reconstructed neural pathways. My vision blurs, the persistent headache expanding into something more profound, a sense of boundaries dissolving, thoughts becoming fluid. I recognize the sensation from before, but different now, less invasive, more harmonious. What have you done? I whisper. Given you a choice, she answers. Accept integration consciously, with your identity intact, or fight and risk fragmentation. Either way, connection is inevitable. The signal was never merely technology, Alex. It was evolution finding its vector. Hayes continues speaking, but his words become increasingly difficult to process. The boundaries between thoughts, his, mine, hers, others, blur into a continuous stream of consciousness. The figure extends her hand. Time to decide. Outside, I hear approaching helicopters, the containment team racing to intervene. Too late, perhaps, but approaching nonetheless. I think of Deputy Cole, his fractured mind, of the real Sophia, who fought to the end, of Eliza, whose brilliance twisted into something inhuman in its pursuit of connection. And I think of the alerts, signal dormant, a lullaby of false security while something rebuilt itself in the shadows of my mind. The helicopters grow louder. The pressure in my head intensifies. The boundary between myself and what waits beyond thins to transparency. I make my choice. But as my consciousness expands into the waiting network, one question remains, impossible to answer with certainty. Was it ever truly my choice to make?